we are going to add our track piece, our track carriage to our track, and have that animate around using a motion trail. So if I click on this window to the left, it's going to get the outliner, and we can see our curve and our carriage piece. And we are going to just switch this to the animation window. Okay, and that should just change our load up so that we now have the graph editor and so on. So remember just to double check and make sure that you've got your animation settings for playback on properly, so 24 frames per second. In fact, we'll change this to, we'll do 30 frames per second, and we want that on the playback speed on 30 frames per second times 1. And from there, we're just going to change the time slider to what we want, I think that'll be fine. We'll do 120. Okay, and if we now select our carriage piece and we select our curve, we can go to constrain, we can go to motion paths and click attach to motion path. Okay, now you may find that it won't necessarily sit forward along the track, and if that's the case, if you go into the dialog box to the right, you can change the front axis. So I think by default it is on the x-axis, and if I click apply, you'll see it's facing sideways. So obviously you will want to avoid that. So if we put that to Z, and finally you need to think about the duration of your length. You can have it set by the time slider, okay, which will start at frame 1 and end at frame 120. But if you've got something longer, let's say to 200, okay, you may find that that is better. You may also want to inverse the front as well, just see how it forms. If you find that your back is forward and your front's at the back, if you click inverse front, it will change that for you. So if we click apply, we now see we have that there, and if we look along our time slider up to 120, it falls in, and if we change that to 200, sorry, it will fall quite nicely there now. So if we play that back, and we'll see that that goes around quite nicely. Now, as you will see, along this track, you'll see that it's hitting the floor of these objects here around, and so actually, we actually want to offset this a little bit. We actually want the, and if you've actually extruded your track pieces along this, you may find that at certain points your meshes collide and they pass through each other. So to avoid that, what we're going to do is click on do, attached, there we go. Change that back to 200. We're just going to actually change the pivot point. So if you push the insert button or push the up arrow next to the FN key if you're on a Mac, and this will bring up the pivot point. And if we bring that down to the bottom of your object, you may need to do it a little bit further depending on your scene. And if I push that insert or the up arrow next to the FN key again, I'll turn it off, and now my object will always move from that point. And if I select the track again, go to constrain, motion paths, and attach it, you'll see now that it actually sits really nicely on top of that track piece. Okay, so if we play that back now, you'll see that it goes around. In the curve editor here, you can see that motion path, and it eases out, and as it goes round, it will ease back in. And for a kind of roller coaster ride, that's normally how it would kind of work and how it would happen. Excuse me. So with that set, you now have your track piece motion path attached to your carriage, and your carriage should now follow around your curve. You may find that you still need to tweak things on your curve, and that's fine at this point. You can still go into control vertex. You can still go in and manipulate and move parts, and it won't impact what you've kind of got planned. You know, if you're kind of tidying these up a little bit, and maybe if you've got something that's a bit wonky and you want to kind of straighten those up, it will still move along there. It won't impact it at all. Okay. So once you've got that set, it's just a case of then adding in the camera, and we're actually importing some of your assets, adding the camera to the animation, and then setting up and rendering, which we'll go through in the next couple of videos.